Hey everyone, I'm Cecil Laird.
Fuego here.
And we're back with another episode of the Horror Show News. Our top story today is all about Kong and Godzilla. It was recently revealed that Kong Skull Island, which is the sequel to Peter Jackson's King Kong starring Jack Black, has been moved from Universal to Warner Bros. And a lot of people are speculating, and The Hollywood Reporter actually confirms that it's in order to set up a crossover between Godzilla and King Kong. Once again, after all these years, they're going to go up against each other. Now, another tie-in between the movies is that the Kong Skull Island film is apparently going to make reference to the Monarch organization, which was the monster hunting organization in Gareth Edwards' most recent Godzilla film that Ken Watanabe's character was actually an employee of in the film. Now we have both Kong Skull Island and the sequel to Gareth Edwards' Godzilla coming before we see any sort of crossover, but people are mentioning that it might come as early as 2019. Now the other issue involved with these two properties is that if they did meet at this point, Kong is only about maybe 8 humans high, and Godzilla is about 18 stories high, so it is unclear exactly how they will match up physically, but Legendary is apparently confident that they'll be able to come up with a rationale as to how the two can be both combatants and allies. So here's looking forward to another King Kong versus Godzilla crossover. Should be total fun.
That's the type of rumble I want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of another type of rumble, we actually have rumblings that Stephen King is having another adaptation come to television. With the departure of the series finale of Haven based on the Colorado Kid and the cancellation of Under the Dome, it looks like there's a void to be filled, and Dimension Television is bringing it with a small screen adaptation of The Mist, which was already previously adapted by Mr. Frank Walking Dead Darabont.
Mm-hmm.
And despite being source material that barely breaches 100 pages, there is apparently thought that they can stretch the mythos of the story into 10 different episodes with different characters being explored in situations not originally shown within the book. And with the type of rich history behind the story, I think that there's a high likelihood that we have some potential here.
A little bit of Lovecraftian action. It's going to be good fun, I'd say.
Oh, yeah.
In our next story, filming has officially began for the sequel to the James Wan instant classic, The Conjuring, from just a few years ago. The Conjuring 2 has officially gotten underway under James Wan's wonderful tutelage once again, and good news abounds with The Conjuring 2 because both Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are said to be reprising their roles as Ed and Lorraine Warren, the infamous ghost investigators that the first film was based on, as well as the idea behind the Annabelle spin-off, which the less said about the better. So I am personally looking forward to yet another James Wan gem in the horror genre. I can't wait.
Should be spooktacular. Love James Wan. And in our final story of the day, there's another TV series that has had a much more difficult time coming to the small screen than my previous story in The Mist. Preacher, the Garth Ennis classic from the 90s, is finally officially going to be released in May of 2016. There was a great deal of uncertainty about whether AMC was actually going to pick the series up, but it has officially happened. So Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg can rejoice with a little bit of an assist from Sam Catlin, who did, Breaking Bad, for instance. The series is very religiously charged, and that's likely the reason why there's been so many stutter steps, from a one-time HBO adaptation to even Academy Award-winning director Sam Mendes being behind the lens for a feature film. But I think the small screen, personally, is a much better way to tell this story based on its scope, and it is a very exciting day for geeks and religious fanatics across the nation.
I would say so, definitely. Now let's get into the editorializing, Jaime. How about it? Now, what do you think of the Kong and Godzilla crossover that's apparently in the early stages of development?
I'm stoked for a rumble, and that's what Godzilla was always all about. I mean, I think he only had films where he was destroying stuff a couple times without fighting other people. I remember the one with Perry Mason in it.
The 1985 one.
That was the one that I first saw, I think, if I remember correctly.
Me too.
So, and yeah, there was the one which was so poorly done by the ID4 guys, but it should be exciting to see him actually fighting and expanding the mythos. So.
Yeah. And what about the size issue? Because I don't know exactly. I mean, someone's going to have to get radioactivity spilled on them, and I'm guessing it's going to be King Kong.
Indeed, it's what most people have been kind of poking fun at about this idea. But then again, if they were able to make it work in black and white in the past, why can't they make it work now?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they'll think of something.
Absolutely.
So yeah, next up I have to inquire with you about The Mist. Have you actually read the original short story that King did?
I have not. My only exposure to The Mist is the Thomas Jane movie that came out not too long ago, which was good. It ended up being more character drama than actual creatures. I mean, there was a couple creatures here and there, largely disguised by the mist.
Yeah.
But even the allusion to them was a lot of fun. I enjoyed seeing, I mentioned Lovecraftian earlier, I enjoyed seeing the tentacled, things coming under the shutter doors and people that would try and run out into the mist, they would get attacked by what looked like enormous kind of insecty things. So I'm intensely interested to see what they do because I want to see more creatures, me.
Yeah, the only unfortunate part is that it was always, even the short story itself, a element of people, fighting amongst one another, which actually appears in quite a few Stephen King books where people are facing dire circumstances. They often quarrel amongst themselves, and that's exactly what happens within this one. But I think it's kind of cool that they're not necessarily going to retell the story of everyone stuck in the supermarket. They're going to say, okay, where could other people be trapped within this stuff? And
oh, really? Okay,
yep.
Good. I'm glad that it's not just going to be all supermarket.
Exactly. No. It's supposed to explore those type of other stories you could potentially see within the mist, and it's cool that after announcing it, I believe it was 2 years ago, that Frank Darabont was at a convention in November of 2013 and mentioned it, that it's finally seeing the light of day.
So I'm excited about that. Now, another thing I'm excited about is the sequel to The Conjuring. It came on again when we went to Scarefest this past weekend, and it ended up being just as fun watching it again just on TV. I was actually sitting through the commercials waiting for the next part, which I can't say I do very often. So I'm excited to see if James Wan can capture that lightning in a bottle one more time with this one.
Truly, especially after, he departed the Insidious franchise, correct? He did not do the third incarnation, and I thought The Conjuring was better than the Insidious films, at least for me. Obviously it's all subjective, but I'm very excited that after the mist stuff that was Annabelle, we can kind of get back to the proper story here.
Yeah, well, Annabelle didn't have James Wan behind the helm, so that's part of why it probably wasn't super great, but I'm definitely excited about that.
Yeah. And the reason we're saving this for the end is because this is what I'm the most excited about. This is me having a fanboy moment. Preacher is one of my absolute favorite series from the 90s, if not ever. I love Garth Ennis, whether it's Just a Pilgrim, the specials, all of his stuff, or the boys, I should say, not the specials.
I'm a big fan of Crossed and
Crossed
numerous other things.
How could I forget Crossed? This is the horror show, for God's sake.
Exactly, I'd say so.
Yeah, and it's just had such a struggle. Kevin Smith has, claimed it's one of his favorite comics ever, as have many other edgy 90s guys, Quentin Tarantino. The list goes on, and it involved so much of the 90s. It epitomized it, from just the attitude of the dark comedy to the ultra violence and all of its unnecessariness. It's such a wonderfully written comic. I'm hoping they don't mess it up. Yeah, that's what I'm most worried about at this point. Now that we know it's coming, we're actually going to see it.
But at least it's going to series, so that's good. That's at least a step in the right direction. Constantine went to series 2, but then it only made it through one season, although the character is still alive, apparently, and going to be showing up on the Arrow's new season, so that'll be interesting, and hopefully Preacher will make it longer than just that one truncated first season.
Yep, and they didn't let the Hellblazer smoke, but apparently they're going to let Jesse Custer smoke, which is pretty cool. So.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, that'll be good then. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Horror Show News. I've been Cecil Laird.
I'm Fuego. Gracias.
And remember, stay scared.